to start?
Our camp host had talked to people and found a need for places where they weren't reached by other kinds of medical help. There are many organizations that go over there to help. Many. Some of them go into the hospitals and do what they can. Some of them do what we do. Some of them go out to the orphanages and other people come into them. But Carly had found this tent camp that was an hour and a half away from where our compound was, and we went and, kind of assessed where would be the safest place to set up the camp and where we could best serve the most amount of people in a controlled environment. They're desperate. They're desperate for food. They're desperate for medication. They're desperate for clean water. They're desperate for attention. So they argue amongst themselves, and you don't ever want to get in the midst of all that. You need to be able to keep yourself separated from that. The tent camp. The very fortunate people in the tent camp may have a tarp to share. And if they do, they'll stretch it as wide as they can get it over the top of poles that are stuck in the dirt and rocks that have sheets and pieces of cloth stretched over them. And that's what they live in. The tent camps that have been visited by some other organizations actually have some porta potties and some real tents. But you'll find families of 6 living in a 3-man tent. They all cook outside. They have to carry their water. They have these huge, they look like pillows that hold entire fire trucks full of clean water, and they come around and fill those waters up. They put a spigot of sorts on it. But you also have to have something to carry your water in.
How big of a problem is clean water?
Oh, it's amazing. I'm even questioning how sanitary, how truly pure the water is that's in the pillows, because where does it come from? Because I saw no water treatment area while I was there. And I said to Carly, who's an engineering student, I said, Carly, it's rainy season. Why aren't they collecting the rainwater and using it? And he said, look at the air. And he's right. The air is so polluted because there's no emissions controls on their vehicle. If you get up above real high in the city and you look down, it looks like Los Angeles.
Wow. You said people are hungry. Describe what you saw.
There are food lines in some areas. There was food distribution being given, rice and beans. People would line up for miles. They may open the food line at 8 o'clock and people would be standing in line, and they'd be lined for miles and miles. And if you didn't have the right card, or a card that was different, or it didn't have the right numbers on it, you'd be turned away after standing in line for hours. Not everybody got food. There was a tent camp that had been completely forgotten by everyone, that a young man named Patrick, who happened to just sleep in the Villa Ormeso, the compound where we stayed, told us about. So we actually took some hydration packs out and did a little investigative work out there and found that we could not do tent medicine in that camp. It wouldn't be safe for us. There was 1,003 families, over 3,000 people who had had no humanitarian aid since the event. They were starving to death. There was no clean water, and there were no tents and no bathrooms.
So what were they doing?
Starving to death. Doing whatever they had to. So after initially looking at these people, we had a group meeting and decided that it would be unsafe for us to enter as healthcare providers into this area. There was no way they could protect us. There was no safe zone for us to, get our backs to be safe. They're desperate people. So instead of concentrating our efforts on getting medicine to them, we concentrated our efforts on getting food to them. So we collected food and water. We spent one morning breaking down 55-pound bags of rice and 100-pound bags of beans into small bags that we could distribute in a crowd. And I did not go with the distribution group because I was asked to go back into another tent camp and do medicine. that morning, and we couldn't all go anyway. But it got heated enough that they ended up not being able to pass everything out, and they had to leave before they could get it all passed out. But by doing that, we drew enough attention to that tent camp that now one of the other agencies called ADRA is going to go in. And the Monday before we left, they took a water tank and some toilets in. And on that Tuesday, they were going to start bringing in rice and beans. So we made a dent in the hunger. We hope that the people that got it shared. There's no way to know.
How does, you mentioned your host, Carly
Jean.
Carly Jean. You said he feeds 70 people a day. How does he do that?
And in whatever manner he can. He took us on a water run. There were 3 of us in his little private vehicle, his little Toyota. And we went on a run to the supermarket, which is no easy feat in itself, to buy bottled water. And in that, he took that time. And that was our second day in the city. So he took that time to talk to us about his culture and about his people and what was happening and so on. And he just happened to mention his tent camp. He didn't dwell on it. He just happened to mention it. And I said, well, who feeds them, Carly? And he said, well, I do. And I said, well, how much does it cost to feed those people? And he said, well, for $10, I can get coffee and bread and juice for my 70 people in the morning. So I bought breakfast one morning, and many of the other people bought breakfast the other mornings that we were there. And before we left Carly with enough rice and beans to feed his tent people for 2 weeks, which will run out Monday.